Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's a sales and former actor comedian who blends humor, experience, and personal development to help people thrive under pressure daily. None other than Mr. Walter Rusniaczek. Oh, did I pronounce correct? My apologies.
It's close. It's good. It's
It's
Rusniaczek,
close.
but or Rusniaczek if you really want to get excited. But yeah, that was good.
Mm.
How
Can
are
you
you today?
please? I'm fabulous, Mr. Walter, and can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Well, my name is Walter Rusniaczek. I go by Walter Ruskin because it's sometimes easier for people to say. I've been, as you know, I've been an actor. I've done comedy. I own a independent car lot where I help people with challenging parts of their lives come to the next side of it. So sometimes they're either in between going up or coming down the ladder, but we help them get quality cars and vehicles that they need so they can keep their lives moving in fluidity. I also do writing. I do a lot of reading, and I have a lot of stressors and a lot of pressures. And I was asked to share some of the books that have influenced my life that made me who I am today. Is that pretty much what we got for the most part? Was that pretty close?
Yes, definitely, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Walter. Yay! Thank you. And today, let's talk about leadership under pressure. You held leadership roles in organizations like AstraZeneca. Is that correct?
Like Astros? I'm sorry. Say that
Zeneca?
again.
Yeah, AstraZeneca. Correct
What
me
is?
if I'm wrong.
I don't even know what the
It's
term means.
oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
So if it's not,
I'm
so if
that's
it's
how's that
not,
for pressure? I don't even know what you're saying. Yes, I'm an astrophysicist. I sometimes I play with Newton and sometimes hang out with Einstein in the ultra universe of
Mhm.
myself while going through wormholes. I'm sorry. What was the phrasing that you
So
used
so
again?
in your inexperience, what is the single most important distinction between healthy pressure that drives high performance and a toxic pressure that leads to burnout and poor decisions?
Oh, what's the difference between good pressure and toxic pressure? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Um, well, all pressure can turn toxic and all toxic can turn good. And what I mean by that is you have to understand if you get lost, sometimes if it feels toxic, you may not understand what it is. Hold on real quick. Like that. Pressure. Just pick up the phone like that and hung up on somebody. Um, Toxic pressure is what is it that we're supposed to be doing? So if you lose focus of what you need to be doing, sometimes it feels like things are coming after you. Say victimize even. And sometimes that good pressure is when you have knowledge or purpose of what you're supposed to be doing. And that's why I do a lot of the reading that I do because sometimes during a long day or at the end of the day when I need to unwind, I don't go drink or do things like that. I just pick up a book and I start reading. And sometimes after I'm done reading, either the characters that I interact with or the philosophies in which I'm being exposed to, I try to integrate them into my own life in the sense of how is it that makes me focus on what I'm doing. It sounded a little muddled, but that's the gist of, I think, what you were asking me. But I don't believe in I don't believe all things are toxic just because it's uncomfortable, and I don't think all things are good just because it's enjoyable. So, how's that? Are you there? Did I lose you?
Very well said. Looking back across from your career, what can you identify a specific moment when you felt the weight of leadership most acutely, perhaps a product recall?
Well, when I was a general manager of a Nissan store, you're talking about product recall. Is that what the question was?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes, all
so
right. Oh,
product recalls are normally done by factory, and that's just managing expectations. So if something is broken by a manufacturer or that you're delivering a product that for some reason fails, those interactions, there's a few things that you need to do. The first thing you need to do is you need to listen. Um, a lot of times, sometimes. You like that? A lot of times, sometimes. There's a sentence structure for you. a lot of times, especially in the beginning, I found myself trying to solve the problem before I listened. And as much as customers want to have things fixed in a timely fashion, they also need to be heard. And so if you give them time to hear, to speak, and not too much time, there's that subtle thing. And what I normally find is that by the third thing they said is what the problem normally is. So if they feel they've been slighted, let's say, on floor mats. I know that's not a product recall, but I'm just using that as an example. A lot of times they'll go, I didn't get a call back, my oil change was too expensive, and I never got my floor mats. And by the time they say the third thing, you go, oh, so if you had your floor mats, we could solve these other problems, which obviously you're building on top, because there's a core problem. Normally, somewhere around the third or fourth thing, it's the thing that they really emphasize. You can see the change in body of them building a case. So a lot of times customers will come in and they'll have this predetermined case that they're going to build, why you either wrong them or why they're entitled to something. And if you're just patient enough without trying to solve the first thing you hear or the second thing you hear, because those normally are not the things that are most weighing on the customer's mind. It's normally that third or fourth thing that you can see this. It's call it touch, call it feeling. I don't even know how you would quantify it. But it's just an experience that I've heard that you have to stop and listen. And I do speak a lot. I do use a lot of words, but I also try to confirm what it is that I'm hearing. Like even in the interview that we're having today, I've often asked, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're asking me. Could you please clarify that? Or is this exactly what you want me to go down? Because I can go down many roads, but if I'm going down the wrong road, it's just a lot of noise, and you have to patiently wait for me to stop speaking. I stop speaking.
Mhm. Very well said, Mr. Walter. Many leaders discover that the pressure they anticipated is different from the pressure they actually feel. Or what surprised you most about reality of leadership pressure?
Um, if you're asking me what's the difference between perceived pressure and reality pressure, is that correct? And what really happens? So I'll
Yes.
tell you a story, because stories are always fun. I was a young man. I just no gray in my beard. And I was going to work, and my wife was with me at the time, and I was having this fantasy conversation. She's like, "Is that how you go to work?" I go, "Yeah, I'm going to war." She goes, "But that's not what happens when you get there." I said, "I know, because I have all this aggression going in, and sometimes I have to let it out before I go in so I can listen." That's one example. But a reality and perceived, I think what happens is when we have perceived pressures, it's normally, for myself, I can only speak in myself, is I have an expectation, or someone has an expectation of a timeline that needs to be fulfilled. Let's use an example of an order for a product needs to be done, or we have to sell so many so we can get more of this product, and maybe we're behind in that reality. And so sometimes you start building stories of excuses in your head of why we're not being able to fulfill the needs that we have, and you start building all these fantasies, so to speak, narratives, if people like to say, to justify your existence and your position. But then when reality hits, you sit down and you're like, well, that's not really what's happening. What's happening is that I'm either overreacting, I'm over directing, or I'm not giving people the tools that they need to be successful. And when you go in and you look at, and you have an idea of, let's say with a customer, like it's simple to say, did you make enough phone calls? That's just very cliche. It's great. You made 10 calls. Who cares? What I care about is what's happening. Is there something in the way we're speaking today that's not clear? Is there something that's inside of you that's not really coming out the right way? Are you feeling unnecessary pressure on some fantasy thing that I gave you that's really not? It's affecting your performance. So I want to be. I like to speak in realities in existence. I don't like to speak in if comes. And so every situation to say is different is obvious, but to know who you are and what's happening, I think just takes time and maturity as a human. And I've been managing since I was 22. I was running car lots. I was running men my age now at a 22-year-old. I came from a very dynamic background, and I was able to handle a lot of those pressures. But as a young sales manager, uh, befriending everyone was very important to me. I figured if they would work hard for me, if they liked me. And to some degree, that worked. And, being young and silly, just to help. As you get older, sometimes you realize that that's not what happens. It becomes you start overworking yourself because they think, well, Walter will do it. And as you get more and more mature in your management and pressure skills, it's not just you learn how to delegate, you learn how to at least manage everyone's expectations, from clients to owners to employees, and mostly to yourself. If you can manage yourself, people do respond appropriately to it. If you're losing your head when things are bad, then it's hard to gain credibility. And if you do lose your head when something is on high pressure, it's not the end of your leadership. It does show some humility. It does show some. We'll use the word vulnerability because that's very popular. We're so vulnerable, but at least it shows that I too am not a perfect person. And so, there's a lot of different facets of when pressure hits, and it really depends on what's on the docket for the day. And if you can find, I'm using the word discipline, to at least find peace and quiet, even in your day, even if something just went sideways, just stop and review it at the end. The other thing also is, you also know when you need to push forward. Just because it's not comfortable, sometimes you just have to push forward. And just because you want a timeout doesn't mean you're going to get a timeout. Just because you want a lunch break doesn't mean you're going to get a lunch break. Just because you want everyone to listen doesn't mean they're going to listen. Just because you had a great idea that everything was going to work this way and it didn't work this way, it's not going to work this way. It's not some cosmic plan of testing your temperament. It's just life on life's terms. And so that's where I think pressure, and that's where leadership comes in. There's leadership where you direct and you sit and you watch. There's leadership where you participate. There's leadership in coaching. There's leadership in taking the reins. And they're all independent depending on whom you're working with. And remember one of the things that's important, and this is one of my favorite quotes from Admiral Rickover, who was an engineer who designed the Nautilus, which is the first nuclear submarine. And his whole business philosophy, or at least his philosophy for the nuclear submarine program in the Navy, was, I'm 100% responsible. And that means if I'm 100% responsible and I hire someone to do a job, they are also 100% responsible. Now, what that means is they have to get that job done no matter what it takes. And if they hire someone, they're 100% responsible. But it doesn't matter because I'm still 100% responsible. So if they're hiring people, I need to know what they're doing. And if I don't know what they're doing and it doesn't work, I just can't go, oh, Jimmy didn't do his job and he knows better. It's not acceptable. Acceptable is I'm responsible for that. Now, granted, we're not talking about people's lives on a ship of a nuclear meltdown, but sometimes it feels that way because sometimes we don't know if a tiger's chasing us because stress is stress and we are human. And so if we can at least know that they are confident that you have their back to say, I'm responsible, doesn't mean that they're not going to be accountable for the things that they did or did not do. It just means that they know that you have them, and it means that I'm responsible. We're in this together. So that does relieve a lot of stressors, I think, when you go to work and you know that someone's not looking to bury you or blame you for your misguidance or your mistakes. Just stand up and go, I did it. I did it. I've had a lot of meetings about meetings with owners and go, what did you do that for? I'm like, because it seemed like a good idea at the time. In the words of, what was his name? General, it doesn't matter at the moment, but his idea was, if there's two bad ideas, pick the best bad idea, because it doesn't matter, you're not going to win anyway. Just try to do less damage to yourself. So anyway, that was kind of a ramble.
Well said, Mr. Walter. In a high pressure moment, some leaders lean on data, others on tuition, others on their team. When everything is moving fast and the stakes are high, what is your default anchor and what is ever failed you?
I'm sorry, say that again. You said when I have what?
What is your default anchor and what has ever failed you?
Oh, what's my default anchor during stress? My default, like what's my cornerstone of where I stop? It has evolved to I have to remember to respond, not to react. And that's when I find myself reacting too fast. Sometimes I have to hold myself back in and go, respond, just respond. And that's not always easy. And especially when things are emotional. And that's when all pressure comes off. That comes from pressure from employees. It comes from pressure from customers. It comes from pressure from the factory. And when things get emotionally charged, it's not just to diffuse it, it's to let it have its space. And that's why I say you have to let people be able to talk. You have to give them the space to be upset. You have to give them the space to feel frustrated. And they have to feel, and I know this again sounds cliche, let them be seen, but at least let them be heard. You know, there was a phrase once, a customer's always right. This customer told me once. I said, that's not true. Customer is not always right. The customer always must be respected. The customer must always be heard. But just because you think something doesn't make it reality. Now, I will do my best to fix whatever it is that is upsetting you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we negligently went out of our way to do this to you. And that's where I think a lot of times as leaders, we take it personal because we are responsible people. It's why we took the jobs. It's why we took the roles, because we feel we can help make it better. And when it falls short of either our expectation, the expectations of those around us, or just the world in general, I at least personally take it personal. And sometimes it's like, well, that's not really your personal problem. And it's like, but it is. But it isn't. But it is. And so that's where the default comes in. It's where I have to sit back and go, what things could I have done to make this not happen? Or maybe it was just impossible to manage. Maybe it's one of those alpha scores that are just an unmanageable task of life, and we don't react our whole entire company because of this outline thing. We just take it and go, okay, well, this is an outliner. Will it happen again? It may, and we can document it and talk about it and say, what do we do in such extreme cases? Well, we have an idea, but we can't change our whole basis of what we do for a few outline things. So your question basically was, what do I, because I went in a lot of different directions because I have a lot of thoughts. What is my base thing is to respond, not to react. And in that, it opened up a lot of different pathways in my mind of like different examples of things that have happened and how I've responded. I hope someone can follow that. I hope I can follow it.
Indeed, we can follow Mr. Walter. When crisis hits, some leaders become hyper visible, while others go quiet to think. What is your natural tendency in a crisis, and how have you had to adapt that tendency based on what your team actually needs for you?
Depending on the eyes that I'm looking at. If the eyes I'm looking at need the opportunity to handle their crisis, then I will step back and let them handle it closely. If in their eyes it is overwhelming to them and it's beyond their scope, and even if it's beyond my scope, I have to step in and do what needs to be done to the best of my ability. So I can take both sides of that razor's edge. It's really circumstantial. I would prefer to let the employee take control because I want to empower the people in which I work with. I don't want to take their ability to think, because once I take their ability to think, I have to think more. And if I have to think more, then I don't need them, and I need to find someone who can think. But there are times in life where you have to, like I said, we're 100% responsible, so we have to be visible sometimes. But when push comes to shove, here I am. Let's go. I'm fine. I know whose name's on the board. I know who's responsible for this. So I'm not afraid of that. I don't hide.
Hmm. So, Mr. Walter, when the pressure is on, do you tend to pull decisions making closer to yourself, or do you delegate more and trust your team to execute?
I would love to think that I delegate. I would
Hmm.
love to think that would be ideal. But sometimes I don't. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. It depends on who I'm looking at and what the situation is. Sometimes they're just not verse enough with to handle that. I do have them sit next to me close by, though, so that they are at least learning, so that the next time if something like that happens, they know how to at least handle it. Besides, can you do this for me? So because I'm in sales, direct sales with direct customers. So in that case, holding their hand and training them and showing them what to do sometimes is the best teacher, so to speak, because you can't really do that in a sales meeting or like, okay, because there's so many different scenarios. But I always ask the question, what were they thinking? What were you thinking? And how did we come to a conclusion? And that's a lot of times all it is. It's just, you have to remember you asked that question. What's the reaction? So what am I responding to? I'm responding to input being told to me by either product, customer, employee, weather, whatever. Something's telling me how I need to react and how I need to solve a problem. And they're just mini riddles. It's easier after a night's sleep. It's easier in the beginning of the day. Sometimes it's easier in the afternoon, but sometimes it's hard, especially if you have like 20 or 30 of them back to back to back. You got to sometimes just go, I'll give you an example. I was a general manager of a store, and I had some deaths. I had a death in the family, and my partner had a death in his family, and the customer came in and they were very upset that the things were not getting done. And I looked at the customer and I said, normally I would really listen to you, but today I can't. And I used a couple more words than that, but I haven't cursed so far in the show, so I won't today. And it's not a disrespect or dishonesty. It's just I don't have the mental capacity even to do what you want me to do. So if you need to go somewhere else and give us a bad review, then I understand that. But if you can come back tomorrow or the next day, I'll give you all the attention I have. But right now I'm emotionally drained. I'm a shell of a human being you're staring at. And when you talk to someone honestly like that, they just look at you and go, I'll be back. I'm like, great, I'll try to call you in 2 hours and we'll set a time. And they go, yeah, I would appreciate that. And you call in 2 hours and you set a time, and people are people. People are humans. They just want to be talked to straight up. And I stop because it's kind of funny in the sense that they don't always want to hear all the truth, but at least they want to hear at least what it is that you're willing to do and why you can or cannot do what you need to do. And that's really what pressure is. Again, it's in some of this narrative in which I'm expressing today, there are a lot of pressure points of interaction with humans with humans. There are other actions of different pressure, like of funding and monies and coming in, and how do you manage those expectations? Like sometimes money comes in and you have X amount of product you need to buy, but you don't have enough because this isn't going the way you want. And that's a whole nother juggle of pressures that you have to sometimes adjust yourself with. And that's more an executive hat. How do I manage a war? I mean, people all of a sudden, even though it's not my fault, it's just I have to manage that. I have to manage tariffs. I have to manage healthcare sometimes. There's things that come across our paths that really weren't in our job description, but because of I use the word vastness of the world, or the connection of the world in their phones. Someone's phone looks at them and all of a sudden they say, hey, I got gas. And oh my God. I was like, well, yeah, everything will be fine. The world's not coming to an end. It'll be okay. We still have to get our jobs done. So I wish I had the magic answer to everything, because I wouldn't be on a podcast. They'd probably come up and, put money in my mouth and I'd grant wishes. But, I'd be like Zolar. I just thought that was funny because, never mind.
Mr. Walter, before we wrap up our discussion for today, can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Well, the first book that always influences me is Tarzan, the original Tarzan. And the reason being is it shows to me that man, if given a reason, can learn anything. So if you think about what Tarzan is a boy that parents were killed by apes, raised by apes, was supposed to be killed by those apes, and somehow, because of his thirst to know who he was, he taught himself to read. Later on, he teaches himself French, and they teach him English later on, and he meets a girl, and there's other parts of the story. But it proves that you can learn anything if you have a desire to learn it. And that's really, as juvenile as that may sound, it really resonated with me. It's just like, I can learn anything. I may not be an expert at everything, but I can really learn anything. And I actually have to teach myself. People can instruct you. Teachers show you things. But if you don't give a damn, it doesn't matter. It doesn't connect. So That's the other part about life, right? You go to these meetings about meetings and you're like, well, why am I here? I know I don't want to be here. I can give you a list of why I don't want to be here. That's easy. But why am I here? Why is this person giving me their time? And if it's important to them, why can it be important to me? And even if it's only important for a minute or two and I get one thing out of it, then it was worth my time. And that's my responsibility as a human being, not theirs to teach me.
Thank you, Mr. Walter, for that recommended book. Truly, truly empowering. So, if you were to distill your entire philosophy on leadership under pressure into a single sentence, a mantra, principle, a North Star that you hope people remember you, what would it be?
Reality is not relative, and reality doesn't need your permission to exist. So you better get to reality real quick because it's not waiting for you.
Very well said, Mr. Walter. And can you please invite our listeners to support your business or anything that you want to promote on Book 101 Review?
Well, if you want to book me and have me come talk to your company and say silly stuff, book Walter Ruskin at walterruskin.com or, call me collect and if you're in jail, I'll put money on your books.
Definitely. People, let's support Mr. Walter, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering, business like this to rise. So, Mr. Walter, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your time, sir. Thank you.
Modicon people, see you soon. I think I'm going to invite